behind the scenes to my training with my girls, women who are helping women rise. We are the rising tide raising all ships. Together, we are building brilliance in ourselves, in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces, and in the world. And I believe that a lot of us right now are navigating a lot of change and uncertainty. It's kind of rocking our world. And I know for me, I'm having to dial it up. I spent an extra session at the gym tonight, coming at you right after my workout in the afterglow of all of the beautiful, I call it my glazed donut look here in Florida. It's, you get the little, I feel like I just age backwards here because there's so much moisture and beauty in the skin. Anyhow, today we're focused on reinvention and rebirth. I was starting to feel like, why can I not get over this? Why can't I make it to this better state of being? Because I've reinvented myself many, many times before. And I realized it's because I'm in the middle of a rebirth. So, for those of you who I haven't had the honor of meeting yet, I'm Dr. J. I'm an educator at heart. I love teaching, which requires me to deliver information in a way that gets you excited. It's knowledge, emotion, and strategic action that we combine together to make change in our lives. I'm also a champion of high performance and leadership and a spiritual entrepreneur. And a lot of people think of me as a queen of reinvention because I've reinvented myself many, many times. And as a single mom on a solo income, have had to use reinvention as a career growth strategy. Most recently, though, whew, I was laid off from a job I love right after tripling my mortgage, putting a horse in the yard, buying the 5 acre property with gorgeous Rocky Mountain views. I thought I was living large, and then everything came crashing down. And it probably wouldn't have been that bad had I not been diagnosed with a very aggressive high growth tumor 2 days later. And the growth protein on a scale of 0 to 20 plus was a 51. So, navigating insurance challenges due to the layoff, fighting for my life, and having my little daughter, sweet little angel, say to me, "What happens to me if you die?" Things got really serious in that moment. It felt a little different than reinvention. And I went on this journey that I now realize was a rebirth. I also had to face the music because a lot of times people experience recurrence with cancer, especially with these high growth, aggressive types, because they don't change their lifestyle. 90 to 95% of cancer is diet and lifestyle related, and I don't have the genetic markers for cancer. So I had to face the reality that I created a really beautiful home for disease in my body. And again, that required this reinvention of myself. And I slowly started reinventing myself, yet I had this trauma that I was experiencing with food primarily. I was very terrified because our foods are so toxic. I'm actually not going to go down a rabbit hole into that. You can just Google or ask ChatGPT or open up a Netflix documentary and educate yourself on food and where your food comes from. It is pretty scary and terrifying. And I am working through the trauma of food, to be honest. And so I'm trying to kind of do the opposite of what I've asked you to do because I've learned too much about the toxins in our foods. Simple things, though, that I would encourage you to really look at is alcohol as a carcinogenic. If you could eliminate one thing from your life that will 100x your health, your well being, mentally, your emotions, your feelings of joy, that poison's the first that should go. The second, this one's going to be unpopular, coffee. 1 cup of coffee, according to MRI studies, will keep your limbic system in fight or flight mode for 3 weeks. Alcohol is a poison that only stays in your system for 72 hours. Now you're talking 3 weeks that your amygdala is going to be hijacked, keeping you in that emotional state of flying off the handle and getting frustrated by every single little thing that doesn't go your way, which, if you're living on planet Earth right now, is an awful lot of things. And so, if you prefer that your frontal lobe and executive functioning and rational thought and great decisions be a part of your life, then you probably need to kick the coffee to the curb. So it's little things like that. Staying scholarly, experiencing the curiosity and wonder. It's one of the habits of mind of the most successful people. It's what I study is the mental habits, the behavioral habits of those who are ultra successful. And the world's highest performers, get this, they're not sacrificing everything for success. They are happier, healthier, and less stressed than their peers. So let's dive in tonight to talk a little bit about reinvention and rebirth, because you can reinvent yourself in the direction of a high performance leader. You can reinvent yourself after layoff. You can reinvent yourself after divorce, after a career challenge, in the aftermath of a bully or someone who hurt your heart and soul. There's plenty of opportunities in our lives to experience reinvention. So let's talk a little bit about this concept. I first came across this word in a book published in 2004. It was called The Fred Factor. And it was by an author named Mark Sanborn, who's a Colorado native. And he lived in Littleton at the time. And he was writing about his mail carrier named Fred, who, when he lived in Wash Park, which is a really beautiful community in Denver, he noticed that this individual had these really special character traits. And so he talked about the things that this gentleman did as an extraordinary mail carrier. And one of them was reinvent yourself regularly. And I remember at the time I was an instructional coach and I was teaching a lot of gifted and talented children. And I talked to them about this concept of reinvention. That if you have a bad day or if you score badly on a test, you can reinvent yourself and show up differently the next day. As a parent, sometimes with my daughter, if we get off to a bad start, let's say it's a Saturday morning and we're doing some chores or we've got an agenda and things aren't going as planned, I'll say, let's rewind, go back to bed, set a timer or a new alarm for 5 to 10 minutes from now or 3 minutes from now. It doesn't take long. And just go tuck in and then get back up, start the day fresh. And so in the book, he talks about a few concepts and ways to reinvent yourself regularly. So I'm going to go over 7 highlights to give you that book in a nutshell. Those of you who know me know I love to be your scholar. I'm studying on the things that my clients, my coaching clients, my women who are in my Women's Business Accelerator and in Warrior Woman Society, what they're struggling with, I study. And then I bring those studies and translate them into action so that we can all be learners. The first is to embrace change. When you regularly reinvent yourself, you embrace change, you see it as an opportunity rather than a threat. Sometimes because we're wired with negativity bias, we might see something as a threat or as uncomfortable at first. Yet we can embrace change by telling ourselves, the beauty and brilliance of my spirit is revealed at the edge of my comfort zone. And so it's just a subtle shift in reframing. The second is continuous improvement. Seeking continuous improvement for your personal and professional growth, looking for new ways to improve your skills, your knowledge, and abilities. I always like to look at the World Economic Forum and LinkedIn's job skills reports and find the skills that are top value in society and then say, I'm going to strategically build some of those skills. Probably the number one skill I've built happens to be point number 3, which is adaptability. It happens to also be the number one job skill for 2024 on the LinkedIn skills report, that employers are looking for people who are adaptable, who are agile, who can be flexible and thrive in a constantly changing environment. These are skills we can learn, my friends. How exciting is that? The next is innovation. Using creativity and innovation in your approach to tasks and problem solving. In design thinking at Stanford's D School, they say, how might we? And then when they're generating ideas, they use this theory of yes and. That energetically, vibrationally contributes to more ideas instead of staying stuck in the struggle. I've been riding the struggle bus for a long time in the aftermath of all of these events. And I'm constantly have to say, I'm getting off of that struggle bus and I'm going to align my vibration with a higher energetic frequency. Those of you who train with me, you know, we get our gals out and we start aligning our vibration. Sometimes that is all that it takes to get you out of the stuck. The 5th is self-reflection, taking a moment to sit still and look at your strengths and the areas that you want to grow and strengthen even further. Reflect on your achievements. I love Sullivan and Hardy's book, The Gap and the Gain. It reminds us to not only have a goal and look at the gap and strategically plan how to fill that, But more importantly, to look at the gain, look back at where you started. Those of you who joined me in the Doubt to Daring Masterclass, you know that we look back and we set a timeline and we look at all of the experiences in our careers, in our personal lives that have strengthened us, that have skilled us up, and we stand in that gain. And that self reflection is really powerful. Today at church, my daughter and I went to the membership gathering. It's called Growth Track. And we did the DISC assessment. I used to facilitate that with leaders across the globe in 13 countries, so I was very familiar with the DISC. Yet, hearing again the strengths of being an I and a D personality type, let me just read some of these to you so that as you hear them, you can think about your own strengths. So, are you an achiever? Are you task and mission focused? Do you focus on solving the world's problems? Are you direct and decisive? Notice how, if that's you, it helps you stand a little taller. You feel a little prouder. Take a moment to reflect. Here's the I personality type. These are great influencers, communicators. They're smiling, they're happy. They have a sense of fun and optimism and enthusiasm and confidence. They're people-focused individuals. The S types are determined, persistent, supporters, people-focused, loyal, steady, reserved, calm, relaxed, consistent. They're approachable and unhurried. They're pace-focused. They're peace and harmony fueled. If that's you, doesn't it feel good to stand in the strength of who you are? A lot of people that I work with, we talk about what you have to do, or you get to do, if you're reframing that. And instead of focusing so much on the what, we shift our focus to who we are. Because high performers have remarkable clarity about 3 things, and we work on those in our worksheet and in our reflective time. And so I want you focusing, make that shift happen today. Shift away from what is burdening you, what is plaguing you, what is on your to-do list, and instead shift into who you are. Let's talk about the last personality type. This one happened to be my daughter's number 1, so that was a fun discovery today. These are often the smartest in the room. They're analytical, detail-oriented. They can feel cold because they're not very emotional. They're precision-driven, they're process-oriented and organized. They love data, they're cautious, they're systematic, they're not quick to decide, and they love being correct. If you'd like to do this assessment with me, I encourage you in the link on this live. I have an Extraordinary Life edit session that I'm gifting to you. when you book that, you'll get a workbook with my great 8 dimensions of life so we can look holistically at the entirety of your life and identify what areas do you feel need a little bit of breath of fresh air breathed into them. Maybe they need reinvention or rebirth. Maybe they just need a small, simple edit. And maybe we need to look at who are you in this season? Who are you going to show up as so that you can make it through this chapter? The 6th is purpose and passion. Align your actions with things that you love that bring you joy, and ensure that all of your efforts are driven by meaning and fulfillment deep in your soul's sacred purpose. You'll notice that as you come back to purpose and passion, for me, I'm coming back to what I love, which is teaching, being with people. Somewhere along the way, being really good at my job moved me into systemic roles where instead of focusing on individuals, I started focusing on systems. And what I also noticed as I look back is that my joy diminished as I did that. So in this rebirth, I'm returning home. I'm returning home to the woman that I was. When I look back, I'm like, wow, this is who I was. I was present with people. I love people. I'm thoughtful and caring and kind. I make time for them. Somehow I ended up overwhelmed, facing hurry and hustle as my daily grind. And so coming back and rebirthing is like returning to who God made you to be when you came to this earth. And then the 7th is resilience, learning how to bounce forward from setbacks and failures, viewing challenges as learning experiences and opportunities for growth. I remember walking through my home and just telling myself over and over during this journey, I turn obstacles into opportunities. I turn obstacles into opportunities. So now grab your journals. It's time to geek out. We're going to talk. I want you to just divide it in half, rebirth and reinvention. Rebirth is really profound. It's often a holistic transformation that affects every aspect of your being. So, for example, rebirth for me, I had career being reborn, my daughter transitioning into her teenage years, which was an entirely different parenting strategy that I needed to deploy. My health was under a microscope as I looked at all of the foods that are nourishing my cells and affecting the operating system of my body. I was looking at biobehavioral choices. I should be bald here with you in the aftermath of cancer. And I was forecasted to need about 3 to 4 months of radiation, followed by intensive chemotherapy. I got the minimum 4 weeks radiation and a clean bill of health because my oncotype came back so low that the data in my body showed I no longer needed that. So I'm here to tell you all of this change is possible. Whatever it is you're going through, you can stand tall. You can reinvent yourself. You can rebirth into a new version of yourself. So hold on to hope, my friends. So this rebirth is like being born again. It's a shift, radically shifting your identity, who you are. It's your beliefs start to shift. For me, I was feeling alone. I used to operate in this belief that it was me versus the world, that I had to handle everything on my own and by myself. And what I now know is that we are all gifted with special talents, and it brings people so much joy to help one another. That's truly win-win, and that's how God designed us to be, with each of us carrying individual strengths to contribute to one another. And so it's an entirely different way of being. I call it my operating system. My operating system used to be control, and I would basically go around and collect data. And then from that data, I would develop a vision and strategic plan, and then I would execute like a pro. And I can get things across the finish line typically faster, under budget, and with a spirit of joy. And now I'm learning that I can practice stillness and self-care, and that I'm being divinely guided and directed. And I live in this state of flow and miracles. And it's very uncomfortable because this I can count on. This I've been doing for years, decades. This I'm like, I've been doing for days, and it's not quite comfortable. So when we're in a rebirth, you experience this total transformation. That would be bullet one, total transformation. It's typically triggered by a significant life event or a profound realization. It's about emerging as an entirely new person. This is your soul's sacred contract. It's often that these custom agitations are required for you to reach that next level of consciousness. 3D, 4D, and 5D consciousness. Again, if you're not familiar with anything that I'm talking about, I would love to meet you. I know that these appointments happen on purpose. They're divinely guided. So grab that scheduling link that's on this post and get time on my calendar. I look forward to meeting you. I want to hear your story. I want to guide you in this journey of rebirth and reinvention. And we're just going to start small because I know that it's overwhelming. And so what I learned, I call it my Extraordinary Life edit. You don't need full scale reinvention right out of the gate. It's just these tiny little edits that get you there. Rebirth often has a spiritual or existential component. You go through this deep internal change that leads to a new way of experiencing and interacting with the world. Woo, fireworks. I don't know how that happened, but that's kind of cool. A new identity comes out. You leave behind some old patterns of behavior and even some social circles. And then sometimes there's this symbolic death, like a death of an older version of yourself. For example, for me, I used to love to go to this dive bar and eat appetizers and have chicken wings and big 32-ounce beers, and it was so inexpensive. And now that just does not have the appeal that it used to have to me. It's not of interest to me at all. And so rebirth is this more all-encompassing, affects every facet of your existence. And it can happen suddenly by some major event, whereas reinvention can be more gradual. And rebirth often is motivated by a need for a profound interchange or a new way of being, whereas reinvention is just a subtle new goal or adapting to a new circumstance or achieving a personal ambition. So those are some of the the areas where you'll see a comparison is in the depth and scope of change, in the process that you undergo and the duration that that process takes, and in the purpose and motivation behind it. So let's talk a little bit about, let's see, that was rebirth. Reinvention, we kind of covered with the 7. I apologize. I added the Fred factor in at the last minute. So reinvention is incremental, goal-oriented. You keep your core identity, and it has a very practical focus. So for example, when I was making career changes, when I shifted from being in the classroom and in the school system to founding downtown Denver's first elementary school, I now had to think more entrepreneurially. I had to embrace a more business-centered mindset. That was an incremental change. It was goal-oriented. The goal was found the school, take it from concept to reality. I stayed and remained in my core identity as a high-performing educator. The focus was actionable and very tangible, right? Same thing occurred whenever I left that opportunity and then went into founding my own business as a consultant. Subtle shifts, but it was an incremental change. The goal was to consult and help others create innovative schools where learning is joy-filled and personally meaningful. The core identity of myself was the same. The practical focus was, again, actionable steps, tangible outcomes. After that, I went into leading an innovation grant for the Lieutenant Governor for the Department of Higher Education and focused on how we prepare educators. Notice these were all incremental steps in my career. And then later, leading leaders across the globe in a high-tech environment. So all of those were incremental. They were goal-oriented. I remained Dr. J, and they were very practical. There was a goal and a tangible outcome. Rebirth, what I went through in the aftermath of the layoff and cancer, required me to see everything differently. Here's an example. When I was at my brother's wedding, my aunt said, well, can't you just treat yourself tonight? When we were at the dinner buffet. And I just looked at her, I said, you know, I don't look at this as a cheat day or a treat anymore. Poisoning my body is not a treat. Skipping my workout is not a treat. I now know how much my cells change as a result of lifting weights, and I love it, and I love being strong, and I love the definition, right? I love that my core is so strong, and I'm like, no more fluffy muffin top. Being fit over fluffy is like so much better to me. I can't even imagine. And the version, I remember a day when I used to say, well, I'm fine with my muffin top. I'm comfortable in this because I love green chili smothered anything. Now I look at it and go, it's actually not that good. It tastes good for a little while, and then maybe 15, 20 minutes later, I feel like I'm in a food coma. I'm absolutely exhausted. And I notice the inflammation almost immediately, and I'm fluffy, and I'm fatigued, and I'm experiencing brain fog, and I'm realizing those things just aren't worth it to me anymore. Burger nights, pizza nights, all the things. I still do love nachos. But that's the difference between reinvention, that subtle and incremental growth, versus rebirth, where you just see the world in a different way. It's almost like if you do this, where you put on your blinders, this is your life, and then rebirth is like, it's like a little baby chick coming out of an egg. You have an entire paradigm shift that occurs. So let's talk about a few examples. I'm going to go through some personal reinvention and rebirth examples, professional, and then some social and community examples. So personally, if you transition from a corporate job to an entrepreneurial job, if you transition from work that has been strategically done and aligned and into a passion in something entirely different, that might be a reinvention opportunity. Health, we've talked about adopting a healthier lifestyle. This can be incremental, or it can be a rebirth kind of overhaul, like I did with cancer. Mental and emotional growth, embracing therapy or coaching to address your past traumas, to develop better ways of coping, to improve your mental health. You might be embracing or exploring new spiritual practices such as meditation, mindfulness, joining a spiritual community that leads you to a deeper understanding of yourself and your purpose. You might take up a creative pursuit like a hobby or artistic endeavor. Those would be examples of personal reinvention and rebirth. Professionally, could be leaving a stable job to start your own business. I just recently heard Simon Sinek talking about the instability of corporate and how entrepreneurship is now more stable than a corporate job. So if you're thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, I'm your girl. I want you in my Women's Business Accelerator. We're going to help you pull out your uniqueness, identify your strategic market, and get you into action and earning so that you're not a hobbyist. A lot of people, I have one of my friends, she says, my husband tells me I'm playing business instead of running my business. And that's the difference between running your business as a hobby and running your business as a CEO. So I work on the leadership development piece so that you have that ability to craft the compelling vision, to identify the objectives and key results that you're working towards, to have a systemic and strategic plan, and then to embrace that divine state of miracles and flow. Weave in all of those pieces because that is part of what makes us spiritually guided entrepreneurs. Leadership development. Developing new skills to inspire and lead a team effectively and efficiently, that's a professional reinvention or rebirth. Furthering your education, obtaining additional qualifications or certifications, adopting new technologies, lean projects, streamlining operations, all of those things, networking and mentorship, building a new professional network, seeking mentorship from others who've achieved things that you aspire to achieve, gaining insights and advice and support. Those are examples of professional reinvention and rebirth. And then we have the social and community aspect, volunteering or participating in community service projects to give back and make a positive impact in your local community. Culturally, traveling to new places, learning about different cultures, integrating those experiences into your worldview and into your lifestyle. Advocacy, taking a stand on a social issue and joining an advocacy group or leading an initiative to create meaningful change in our society. That would be another example of reinvention and rebirth at the societal and community level. Relationship building. This one's so big. Investing time and effort into building deeper, more meaningful relationships with your family, with your friends, with your partner. And lifestyle change. Decluttering, downsizing, adopting a minimalist lifestyle. I always say now I'm looking at spending less so that I have less of a requirement to earn. Because I had a pretty big spend, $7,000 a month mortgage. It cost $10,000 to $15,000 a month to run the barn and all of the horse everything. And I realized that stress just wasn't worth it. So instead of reinvention and incrementally doing more, I decided a rebirth was in order. Let's recalibrate and simplify. So both reinvention and rebirth are going to require significant change. And that is why it is so important for you to position yourself in an environment where, just like when you bring a new baby into the world, right? You want to prepare that environment with such intention. And that's why I've created Warrior Women's Society and the Women's Business Accelerator, because those environments are spaces where your heart and soul can be nurtured, where you are seen, where you belong, and where you're heard, where you're empowered, where you're celebrated, where you speak your truth, where you stand in the greatness and brilliance of who you are. That's why we're here, my friends. So let's get started. I'll help you figure out if one of those paths are right for you. But the most important thing that you can do right now is schedule your Extraordinary Life edit. So click the link and let's just find time. We are divinely appointed to meet. That's how this works. Your vibration is what pulls me out of bed in the morning. It is what has me fired up and fueled at nearly 9 p.m. on a Sunday, doing this research, putting together these talking and teaching points to help you learn. I don't do that for the joy of me doing it, right? I am called to do this because your vibrational energy has drawn me in. And so if that resonates with you, get yourself scheduled. I look forward to meeting with you. It has been my honor to spend this evening with you. Go out and shine your love and light into this beautiful world, my friends. Mwah.